At this time, we still our minds and our bodies in order to recognize the presence of God. This time of meditation is your opportunity to be still and know. Be still. This act is sometimes difficult for us because we have so much to do. There is so much going on. There's baseball practice, there's football. There are meetings, appointments, that favorite television show that's coming, or simply chores around the house. But with everything that's going on, it is important to us to find that time to be still. Not just physically, but mentally. Be still emotionally. Take a pause. In that pause, that is your time to just breathe. In that pause, it's time for you to say, thank you, God. In that pause, that is your opportunity to hear the still small voice saying to you, you are my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. It is in that time of pause that you can recognize God's healing presence. It is in that pause where you can experience forgiveness. To forgive means to give forward. So in this pause, this is your opportunity to give love where there once was hate. This is an opportunity for you to give peace where there once was discord. This is time for you to give understanding where there once was confusion. Take this pause to listen to the still small voice. Now bringing your attention back to this room and to this place. Acknowledge the fulfillment Acknowledge the fulfillment of that health. Acknowledge the fulfillment of that joy. And this is all done and accomplished in the name and through the power that is in the name of our master teacher and elder brother, Jesus the Christ. Amen. And so it is.
Now, please join us in singing our thoughts and prayers. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God's always there. And every thought becomes a prayer.
Thank you, Brad. This Lenten season is, or I should say has been so far, phenomenal. These Lenten lessons are so very important and so very vital. This one today, as I was going through and preparing for it, I want to open by saying anybody who is in or who has been in the service industry, this lesson is for you particularly. If you're not in the service industry, if by chance you happen to interact with anyone in the service industry, you need this lesson. This one is powerful. We're looking in your books on page 37. Jesus forgave his friend's weakness. If you don't have yours, if you don't have one, we should have a few in the back there. Are we out? We're out. Beautiful. Well, not beautiful, but it's good to know that people are getting them and using them. You see, this lesson today is going to help you to deal with people. That's what this lesson is all about. Dealing with people. And sometimes dealing with people can be a little interesting. Am I right?
Yep.
Dealing with people. Also, how people deal with you could be sometimes interesting. Oops, I didn't mean to go there. But in any event, the whole Lenten season is about you making a transformation. Preparing yourself for a resurrection. For you to rise above where you had been before. Not that where you were before was bad or anything was wrong with that. It's about beginning to or moving yourself a little further along on your spiritual advancement. Now, how we do that is through the process of forgiveness. You find on page 37, the fourth Sunday of Lent finds us once again with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, just as a quick recap. Gethsemane metaphysically is that struggle that goes on within you when truth is recognized. Because you see, sometimes when truth is recognized, we don't want to accept it right away. Or it's difficult for us to really grasp this truth once it comes into our consciousness. There's a struggle that goes on within all of us on a day-to-day basis. And that struggle is exemplified, or the example of that struggle we find in the Garden of Gethsemane. So as it keeps on further, say, as we adapt his experience into our own. So far, we have seen him make a point of praying alone while asking 3 good friends to stand nearby. Now, let's go back and look at how we started this journey in Gethsemane, where he asked those friends to stay with him. In Matthew, the 26th chapter, the 36th to the 38th verse, then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. Now he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, who were James and John. In this lesson, we pick up what happens next. So we got Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He took 3 of his buddies with him and said, I need y'all to come with me. Now y'all sit here. I got to go over here and pray for a while. Now what happened when Jesus got done praying and came back to his friends? Oh, his friends, his buddies, his road dog, his ride or die. Got back there and they were asleep. Now, here's where we pick up the lesson for today. Now, Jesus returned to Peter, James, and John, who he'd asked to stay awake with them. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, so you couldn't stay awake 1 hour? I need you to stay awake and pray that you may not come into a time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And it says again, he went away a second time and prayed. And this is a very, very important part of the lesson here. After he came back and he found them asleep, he said, look, I've just gone an hour. Ooh. He went away to pray, and he came back after an hour. There are some of us who find it difficult to stay in prayer 5 minutes. But he was waiting for an hour and came back and found them asleep. I remember, I'm not sure what year it was, but it was one Sunday during meditation some time ago. The meditation that's gotten so good, I'm sitting here, my dad is there, mom is on the other side. Meditation that got so good, dad was and we had to wake him up during meditation and nudge him and say, come on now, wake up. There are times that we drift off and fall asleep. But Jesus was saying to him at this point, look, the reason I need you to stay awake is so that you can pray too. Because I want you to pray, because there are going to be some things that happen to you that you need to be aware of. I'm not doing this just for me. This prayer time is for you as well. And that was the message he was trying to get across to them. And he understood at that point, they mean well. They just don't have the capacity to do so. Now it says that Jesus' initial reaction to these sleeping disciples seemed to be annoyance. And we can understand his disappointment. However, Jesus took this moment to be a teaching opportunity. That's very important, that Jesus took this time to be a teaching opportunity. Every time we experience something that may not be working out or may not be the way we want it to be, we have to take a lesson from our Lenten guide and take that as an opportunity to learn something. Everything we experience in life is a teaching opportunity. The question is, are we learning the lesson? Now, here's the wonderful thing about lessons. Well, you might not say it's a wonderful thing, but it's a true thing about them. If you don't learn the lesson, you're going to repeat it. The lesson will show back up again and say, okay, if you didn't get it this time, maybe you'll get it this time. And guess what? If you don't get it that time, what happens? It's going to come back again. You will keep repeating the lesson or you'll keep repeating the experience until you learn the lesson. And only when you learn the lesson will you get the blessing. And you see, and sometimes we wonder, well, how come things aren't happening for me? And why isn't this going right? And why isn't that going right for me? You haven't learned the lesson yet. So what is it going to take for you to get the lesson? And that's what we find in this particular part of the story. They didn't get the lesson the first time. They went to sleep. He had to go away, came back again, and said, okay, you sleep again, dog, what's up? What's going on? How come you keep going to sleep? I got to go back over here and do what I got to do. But then the third time he comes back and they're asleep again. Jesus is saying at this point, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Now, taking Jesus' words to heart. Look at the top of page 39. Taking Jesus' words to heart for ourselves. That's crucial right there. Take it to heart for you. In other words, yes, Jesus went through this. But what about me? In what ways is our spirit willing, but our flesh is weak? Uh-oh, this gets us into some deep questions here. Question number 1 in your book said, maybe it's knowing how to take care of our bodies, but failing to do so. You see, we got to start looking at ourselves, because you see, we do the same thing that the disciples did. They had the opportunity to do something. Jesus explained to them, hey, look, I'm going to pray. I want you to pray too, so that this type of stuff doesn't happen to you. They knew they had the information, but they slept. Their spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak. Knowing how to take care of your bodies and you failing to do so, or we fail to do so. That is just one example that we find in the book of how we went to sleep. The second example there. Maybe it's suspecting that we are being called to make changes in our lives, but decline to heed the guidance. How many times have we asked God for something, or we've asked for guidance, or we've asked for directions, but don't listen to it? You ever drive with a GPS? I've done it. I turn the GPS on because I want directions on how to get to where it is that I'm going, but then it says turn left and I keep straight. You see, we decline or we fail to take the guidance, even though we've asked for instructions, we've asked for guidance, but then when the guidance comes, we don't accept it. Now, there's a whole lot of different reasons why sometimes we don't accept the guidance, or we don't accept the direction when it comes. The main reason we don't accept the direction when it comes is because it requires us to make some type of change or adjustment, and we don't want to make the change or adjustment because we think that if they would just do what they're supposed to do, everything would be all right. So we don't change because we think they're are the ones who are supposed to change. The third example of us seeing how we sometimes fall asleep, maybe it is seeing some of the ways that we could improve the world, but never quite get up off the couch. You see, there are some little simple ways that we can contribute to this being a better world. But we just don't do them. That's an example of Jesus going away to pray and us falling asleep. Sometimes it's just a simple thing as recycling a can. If everybody would just recycle a can or recycle plastic, that would contribute to a safer and healthier environment. But then we begin to say, well, why should I do that when it's like 100 other people who aren't doing it? That's what we think logically. Well, it doesn't make sense. Well, people are going to do it anyway, so I'm just going to go on and add to the problem. It may not make a difference what they do, but the question is, why are you falling asleep? Jesus asked the question, I'm going to go pray. Would you stay awake while I pray? It's not about what somebody else is doing or what somebody else is not doing. It's about what you do. So we have Jesus and his buddies in this very, very stressful situation for Jesus, and he asked them to do something particular, and they failed to do it. This is why this lesson is so important, because it teaches us how to deal with people. Because Jesus was doing the same thing, dealing with people. Now, if we are going to be successful, or in order for us to be successful in dealing with people, we have a lot of instructions this week on the things that we need to release in order to deal with people. I have to emphasize that and say that again. This week, with our Lenten guide, there are things that we learn that we have to release in order to deal with people, not what they need to release. Because we would hope that they would release the stuff that they're doing. But we can't ask them to do something that we ourselves are not willing to do. So what is it that we're going to release in order to deal with people? Look on page 41. This is the first thing I want to give to you this week out of our Lenten guide. If you want to be successful in dealing with people, I release resentment. Uh-oh, that's a biggie. I release resentment. Come on, folks online, come on. I release resentment. Again, I release resentment. It starts out by saying resentment is tempting. You are justified, right? You had a reasonable expectation of something. And that's where the resentment comes in. When we have an expectation that someone else is going to do something and they don't. Jesus expected the disciples to stay awake. And they didn't. You go into Kroger's, you go into Costco, Walmart, or whatever grocery store you go to, you have an expectation when you go to the line that says 15 items or less. And somebody in front of you has 20 items. You had an expectation. And when they don't meet that expectation, that's when the resentment comes up. What's wrong with them? But we find later on, it's after said you had an expectation of something, yet it didn't happen. We hold the resentment because something didn't happen. Somebody didn't do what you thought they should do at a specific time. So what? It happened. Release the resentment towards them. How do you release the resentment toward them? First of all, you realize that there are things that you do that don't live up to somebody else's expectations. Because people say to me, well, Rev, how can I get people to do this? I want them to do this. Not realizing that the same thing that they are wanting that person to do, they themselves are doing the same thing. Jesus said it this way: the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. What happened, happened. Relax, relate, and release. Now go over to page 42. You'll find something else in dealing with people. That if you release this, you will find your relationships with other people so much better. I release complaining. I release complaining. This is a wonderful story here. Everyone complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. That old adage, often attributed to Mark Twain, may elicit a smile because we know much of what we complain about is beyond our capacity to resolve. We complain about it over and over and over again, and the majority of the stuff that you're complaining about, you can't do nothing about. But here is the problem. While you are complaining about what you can't do anything about, the things that you can do something about, you're not doing. Ooh, where have we heard that before? God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage, come on, to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. While we're complaining that somebody else is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, instead of Jesus complaining about his buddies falling asleep, he couldn't do anything about that. But what could he do? He could forgive them and understand that everyone is operating at their level of exactly. Understand there's some things you just can't do anything about. But what you can do something about that. I don't remember what the speech was, but I do remember vividly watching, I believe it was the State of the Union address, when President Obama was speaking, and he made a statement and somebody said, boo. His response was so spiritual, it struck me to the core, because he said, don't boo, vote. And that's what a lot of people do. They sit back and they complain about something else instead of actually doing something about it. If we're going to deal with people, release or give up the complaining. Now go over to page 43. Here's the last one that we're going to deal with about how to deal with people. We must release mistrust. Got to release mistrust. In our humanness, when we have expectations of someone and they don't live up to our expectation, that resentment begins to build up. We start complaining about what they did or did not do. At that point, it leads to mistrust. You see, if we ask someone to stay awake while I pray and they don't, we fall into the habit of, you know what? I asked somebody to pray for me before. I'm not going to ask them again because I can't trust you to stay awake. I asked you to do something before. You didn't do it, so I can't trust you to do something. Not only I can't trust them to do something, what happens is it spirals into I can't trust people. In dealing with people, if we are going to have a resurrection and we are going to rise above where we were at one point, it's learning how to trust. If you look down to the bottom of the page there, you'll see what words we find in Psalms 13:5. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. The thing is, we put our trust in the wrong place. We want to trust somebody. We want to trust them. And because they did something wrong, our heart gets closed. We put a block up and we don't trust anybody. But what happens to us when we put that block up and not trust anybody? We're blocking our blessings. Always remember that the one that we are supposed to trust is God. We're supposed to trust in his steadfast love. And the wonderful thing about it is when we trust in God, we will then be guided and directed to the right people that will do what needs to be done at the time that it needs to be done. We all got to deal with people. This week's Lenten lessons helps you in how to do that. In dealing with people, one of my favorite people is here, and I trust his singing ability. Kurt, welcome. Thank you. Will you?
Thank you. That was wonderful. Appreciate you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is my Surrender song. Hope you enjoy it. Maker of this heart of mine, you know me very well. Understand my deepest parts more than I know myself. So when I face the darkness, when I need to find my way, I'll trust in you, shepherd of my heart, keeper of this heart of mine. Your patience has no end. Love me back into your arms, time and time again. So if I start to wander like a lamb that's gone astray, I'll trust in you, shepherd of my heart. You're the beacon of my night, you're the sunlight of my day. I can rest within your arms. I can know your loving ways. So let the cold winds blow, let the storms rage all around. I'll trust in you, shepherd of my heart. Giver of this life in me, you're what I'm living for. All my deepest gratitude, you love me even more. So as I walk through valleys, listening for the Master's call, I'll trust in you, shepherd of my heart. You're the beacon of my night, you're the sunlight of my day. I can rest within your arms, I can know your loving ways. So let the cold winds blow, let the storms rage all around. I'll trust in you, shepherd of my heart. I'll trust